Good morning, everybody. My name is Deborah Byrne from DBpsychology Services, known across social media as DBpsychology. Today I'm going to talk about this week's blog, which is all about learning to trust your gut instinct. And I would say that that is a very basic, healthy boundary to learn. It's part of your self-care routine. And the reason a lot of people don't know that they have a gut instinct, or that they've lost touch with the fact that they've got a gut instinct, is there is a variety of reasons. Sometimes it happens in childhood through abusive or neglectful situations. Maybe your parent had an addiction, and sometimes you were in care. Maybe it wasn't such a good time for you. There was trauma. Maybe there was sexual abuse. There can be a whole variety of reasons there. In childhood it can happen. The other reason it can happen, you can disconnect from your gut instinct as an adult by, again, being in an abusive relationship. It's a domestic violence situation. It could be that you were raped. It could be that you suffered some form of trauma, and anything at all that will cause anything to get you to disconnect from trusting yourself, from trusting that gut instinct. Needs to be repaired. Absolutely needs to be repaired. So, your gut instinct, what is it? It's basically that feeling you get in your gut that says something is right, or something is good for you, or it can be and more likely, people are more likely to tune into it is because something feels off or something feels wrong, and you have to protect yourself, and therefore you need to back away. It's a very primal instinct, because it indicated to us that there was a danger present, and that we need, this was a danger that we were faced with, and we needed to run. So if you think about it, this is what people back in the Stone Age relied on to keep them safe. And they would have said, oh, something in the periphery it's dangerous here. Don't go down there. Don't go over there. Run for it now. And that is basically what your gut instinct is. It can be very finely tuned with a bit of self-help. And I'm going to talk about ways you can do that yourself this morning. But if you've been in an abusive situation, rape or trauma of any kind, as I said, either as a child or you have to also realise that maybe you have PTSD, and you'll most certainly in all those situations you're going to need therapy. So my first point would be, go and get some therapy. There are very good therapists out there who will help you, and they'll help you to learn to trust your gut instinct again, trust yourself, and eventually trust others. So do please work on that. Now, in saying all that, in order to rebuild that trust, it's a retrust in ourselves, as well as in others, but it is really basically a fundamental way of trusting ourselves. We need time. We need a lot of patience with ourselves, because you're not going to get it right on the first go. You're going to have to learn to love yourself, and I'm going to be talking about that next week. You're going to need to do a lot of practice. Okay, it needs practice, and the practice needs to be consistent. So, in saying all that, how can you self-help? Well, as I said, you need to go into therapy if you've had any abuse or trauma of any kind. You need to have that basic self-care. I'll always go back to basic self-care. You must have a basic self-care plan in place. And you must be using good habits. Now, when I say good habits, I have a list of blogs up there called Good Habits. There's about 6 blogs, all listing and engaging the different senses. So there are the 5 senses, and then I have a 6th one, which is a catch-all for a whole load of other that engage multiple senses. So build healthy boundaries. As I said, trusting your gut instinct usually, and if you've lost the connection, usually means your boundaries are skewed. So you are going to have to learn to build your healthy boundaries again, and build healthy boundaries with others. And I have blogs up there, one for yourself and one for building healthy boundaries with others. So do check that out. Deleting, as I said, I've talked about this before, deleting negative people, very, very important. Deleting negative thinking. So I've talked about both of those before. So we would, we would use meditation, and we would use the meditation in order to get in touch with how we are thinking and how our mind is operating. But it'll also give you a chance to get in touch with how you're feeling at a gut level. So it's a very good, meditation can be used for multiple purposes, not just for relaxation. So gratitude, I'd use a gratitude journal. I would use affirmations. I would use, I would challenge my negative thinking. I would ask myself, is this correct? Is this somebody else's thought? Again, you're trying to build this healthy relationship with you. So you need to be challenging how you're thinking. And by challenging your thinking, you're also saying, okay, this is correct thinking. Maybe it is correct. And then you can say, okay, well then I can trust myself when I'm thinking like that. What way does that connect in with your gut and how you're feeling at that time? Again, we can use our meditation and we can use our journal to do that. So if we are challenging how we're thinking, it doesn't have to be a negative thought we're challenging. We can challenge what we think is a positive thought, and then connect that, use meditation to connect that thought with how we're feeling at the gut level. And that is very, very important to be able to see, how your thoughts are reacting in the body and where it's being held in your body. That is so important, both for negative and positive thinking. It will retune your brain to recognize, okay, when I'm thinking along these lines, how am I feeling at the gut level? And it'll start to make the connection, and it'll start to then become a more automatic habit for you to do. It'll automatically, it'll readjust, as I said, you can fine tune it and it'll become an automatic habit. I would very much suggest to people that they get to know themselves again, particularly if your boundaries are skewed. So you'll want to do take a journal, and I'd set it aside. I'd set a journal aside specifically for this, and I would see, what are my wants, what are my dreams, what are my likes, my dislikes, what are my needs, particularly your basic needs. I'll go back, self-care, basic self-care. What are your weaknesses and strengths? Explore that with yourself. How does that feel? How does that feel in your body? Not just in your mind, but connecting the mind and the body together is so important. So how does all that feel? Write about it. Write down in your journal how that feels. Is this really for me? How does that need? I want to do something. So, well, how does that feel? Is it something I'm doing for somebody else, or is it something I'm really doing for me? Again, review your priorities. I have a free worksheet up there. Review the priorities and say, list them down and say, are these priorities mine, or do they belong to somebody else? If you've got, as I said, not trusting your gut instinct usually means you've got skewed boundaries. So usually means, therefore, you've got to add it on. It's a kind of a domino effect. You've got to say, well, okay, my priorities are usually skewed. I'm usually taking on people's work, other people's jobs, other people's responsibilities. Now it's time to review those and hand them back. This is all part of loving yourself. I would say join a support group if you need it. If you've been in a relationship, particularly with an addict, I would suggest something like Al-Anon, or join a support group if you've had mental health issues. There are lovely support groups out there, both online. If you have other things that you need support with, then I would look for that and look for your support, a support group. That support group then, of course, can become part of a support team, and therefore, your support team is very, very important during all this. So therefore, if you're in therapy, your therapist is part of your support team, your GP is part of your support team. Having at least one good friend. We delete the negative people, but we want to be building a good team of supporters around us. And that would be at least one good friend or family member that you can talk to, and you'll be listened to, and it will be non-judgmental. So think about building those, that support. You need all this when you're trying to work on yourself. You really do need a good support team when you're working on yourself. Last few points would be to stop the blame game. Okay, if you want to leave that victim mode, you have to stop blaming the other person. You're now no longer a victim, you are a survivor, and you've stepped back and away from these people. They're gone. They should be gone out of your life. And so you have to take responsibility for how you're feeling and the actions you are taking. That can be very, very hard. If you're struggling with that, I would say, you have unhealthy boundaries, but I'd also say perhaps go and see a therapist and talk about, what you need to do to take responsibility. Again, that goes back to my point earlier about knowing your wants, your dreams, your likes, your strengths, your weaknesses. All that will help you to stop the blame game and take responsibility. Now, 2 final points, and that would be particularly if you have had any abuse or trauma, and a trauma can happen from a car accident or anything like that. It can be something very simple. It doesn't have to be a major trauma. But if you have had any trauma in your life, I would recommend doing some of the exercises that Peter Levine has. It's reclaiming your body. And they are very basic exercises. Some of them are visualizing. Some of them are physical exercises that you can do in the shower. He has them all listed out. They're on CD. I think he has them up on YouTube as well, but I do have a link out to it in the blog, so do check that out. And the other thing is, if you have had any trauma at all in your childhood in particular, I also recommend people do inner child work. It is the best kind of work you can do for yourself. It is basically, inner child work is about reparenting the child that you were as a child. So it is very, very important to get back in touch with that child and to help them rebuild their boundaries and to know what is safe. And, it'll help you then as the adult you are now. It is very surprising how quickly that work can help you build your own boundaries within yourself now as an adult. It tends to have a very rapid knock-on effect. So think about doing those. They would be done, the inner child work would be done with a trained therapist. Not everybody does inner child work, so do check out what that person specialises in. So I will leave it there for this week. And I'm going to say good morning to Deirdre and Laura. And thank you again for tuning in, everybody. And I will talk to you all next week, and I will be talking about learning to love yourself. So it's a follow-up blog to this one, and I will see you all again next Wednesday morning. And thank you. Goodbye.